Have you ever wondered why some men are haunted endlessly by the quiet departure of a woman they once held close? It's not the loud drama, the desperate pleas, or the fiery confrontations that linger in their thoughts. No, it is the woman who let go without noise, who slipped away like a shadow at dawn, who vanished not with a scream, but with a stillness so profound it unsettled his very soul. In the silence of her leaving there lies a riddle he cannot solve, a wound he cannot close. This is no ordinary loss. This is a psychic tremor that shakes the foundation of his ego, the ghost of a presence that refuses to be exorcised. The woman who departs quietly embodies a paradox, a riddle wrapped in the enigma of the feminine unconscious. She is the archetype of the sovereign not over him but over herself, a queen who does not need to demand recognition or validation. She does not cling, she does not fight to be seen. Her power is in her detachment, a profound knowing that to lose herself in another is to lose her very soul. And in this sovereignty there is an unspoken challenge to the man who remains behind. His ego, built on projection and possession, is forced to confront a void it cannot fill, a loss that cannot be bargained with or reasoned away. Carl Jung wrote extensively about the shadows within us, the unacknowledged, repressed parts of our psyche that cast long, dark silhouettes over our consciousness. When a woman leaves without fanfare, she becomes a mirror reflecting back to the man the shadow of his own fears, fear of abandonment, fear of insignificance, fear of being truly known and then still found wanting. His mind, caught in the web of this quiet severance, replays moments like a broken record, searching for a clue, a word, a gesture that might explain her disappearance. But the silence she leaves is deliberate. It is her final gift and her ultimate boundary. This departure is an invitation to individuation for both of them, though he rarely recognizes it at first. She, having recognized the poison of clinging to the egoic need for external validation, steps into her own light, embracing the Stoic truth that happiness must be forged from within, from the impervious fortress of self-worth. He, however, often remains trapped in the labyrinth of his own making, a prisoner of his unintegrated shadow, unable to reconcile the loss with his narrative of control and conquest. To understand the magnetic pull of the woman who lets go quietly, one must delve into the unconscious dance between masculine and feminine energies. The masculine ego craves closure, clarity, conquest. It demands a story with a beginning, middle, and end, a script where roles are defined and victories are tallied. But the feminine unconscious defies such linearity. It moves in cycles, in mysteries, in silence. When she leaves quietly, she leaves the story open-ended, a riddle without resolution, and this unsettles his ego's need for certainty. He is left in a liminal space, neither in nor out, neither fulfilled nor free. This unresolved tension fuels obsession, not obsession born of passion or love, but an obsession born of the ego's fear of death, the death of identity that occurs when a narrative is shattered. The man finds himself haunted not because he cannot live without her, but because her silent exit dissolves the illusion of control he thought he had. She did not scream, did not beg, did not make a scene. She simply embodied an invisible boundary that he could not cross, and in that boundary lies her power. A power he never anticipated, and a power that now defines him, whether he wishes it or not. Imagine, then, the internal storm raging within him. His mind becomes a battlefield where reason clashes with desire, where memory becomes a weapon wielded against his own peace. He is caught in the paradox of loving a woman who has chosen freedom over possession, autonomy over dependency, silence over chaos. She does not exist in his world as a trophy to be won back or a prize to be reclaimed. Instead, she exists as an archetype of what it means to be whole without needing to be validated by another's gaze. For the woman, this is the culmination of a long journey, a journey through the underworld of her own soul. To leave quietly is to acknowledge that love is not about holding on at all costs, but about honoring the sacred dance between presence and absence, attachment and release. Her silence is a form of radical self-respect, a boundary carved not in anger but in deep wisdom. She refuses to diminish herself by pleading for a place in a heart that cannot hold her fully. Instead, she chooses peace, even if it means walking away alone. This dynamic also reveals the shadow interplay between dependency and autonomy. The man's inability to let go reveals his unconscious tether to the illusion of control, the ego's desperate attempt to maintain its narrative of worth through external validation. The woman's quiet departure is a mirror reflecting back the truth. Worth is not bestowed by another. It is born within the silent chambers of self-acceptance and sovereignty. In this psychological crucible, a profound lesson emerges, one that can catalyze transformation if he dares to confront it. The silent leaving is an invitation to shadow work, to face the parts of himself that are wounded, abandoned, and fractured. It is a call to individuation, to embrace the fragmented self with compassion and courage rather than chasing ghosts in the night. Only when he embraces his own inner sovereignty can he truly understand the gift she left behind, the freedom to be alone, whole, and unafraid. And you, yes, you watching now, what does this mean for you? It means that your power lies not in the noise you make or the battles you fight, but in the quiet strength of knowing your worth without apology. It means that when you release someone quietly, you are not surrendering weakness, but demonstrating the deepest form of courage. To walk away silently is to wield an invisible sword that cuts through illusion and binds you to your own truth. The man who can't stop thinking about the woman who let him go too quietly is trapped not by her absence, but by his own inability to face the silence she leaves behind. And in that silence, in that space where words fail, the profoundest truths reside, the truths about love, loss, power, and the sacred journey of becoming whole. There is a quiet torment in the man's mind, a slow-burning ache that pulses beneath the surface like the distant echo of a forgotten song. He cannot grasp her because she slipped beyond the reach of his expectations and demands. She chose absence over argument, stillness over noise, and in that choice, she shattered the very foundations of his ego's fortress. This is not simply heartbreak. This is a psychological earthquake that fractures his entire sense of identity. He is left stranded on the edge of a precipice, staring into the abyss of what could have been, haunted by the echo of a departure that defied all his attempts to control or understand it. In the depths of this torment, the archetypal dance between the animus and anima unfolds with merciless clarity. The animus, the masculine principle within a woman, represents strength, clarity, and assertiveness, while the anima, the feminine principle within a man, embodies feeling, intuition, and the unconscious. When a woman walks away quietly, it stirs the man's anima, calling forth emotions he often fears to acknowledge: vulnerability, loss, and a longing for connection that transcends egoic desire. But his conscious mind, shackled by the ego's insistence on control and logic, fights back. The more he resists the mystery of her silence, the deeper he sinks into confusion and obsession. Jung's concept of projection is essential here. The man projects onto the woman a constellation of unmet needs, unresolved wounds, and idealized images. He sees in her departure not just a physical absence, but a symbol of his own inadequacies and fears. His ego demands closure, a narrative that fits neatly into the boxes of why and how, but she offers none. Her silence is a refusal to be dissected or owned. It is a sacred act of boundary setting that leaves him adrift in the murky waters of his unconscious. This is where trauma psychology intersects with Jungian depth work. The silent departure often echoes early wounds, abandonments and betrayals etched into the subconscious long before the current relationship began. When faced with this quiet loss, the man's nervous system may spiral into hypervigilance, replaying scenarios like a haunting film, searching for a reason or a fault. His mind becomes a labyrinth of what-ifs and if-onlys, attempting to stitch together a narrative that can make sense of the senseless. Yet the woman's quiet leaving resists being understood through these fragmented, ego-driven stories. She exists beyond them in a realm where peace is found not in clinging, but in releasing. Here, Stoic philosophy offers a beacon amid the storm. Marcus Aurelius wrote that loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight. The man who obsesses over the woman who left quietly is caught in the illusion that loss is a catastrophe rather than a necessary cycle of transformation. The Stoic path invites him to embrace impermanence and to find strength not in holding on, but in the mastery of self, cultivating a fortress within that no external absence can breach. But this is a bitter pill for the ego, for it demands humility and the relinquishing of control, a journey into the depths of inner freedom. And what of the woman who walks away in silence? She carries the weight of centuries of feminine shadows, the guilt of being too much or too little, the fear of being unheard, the pain of invisibility masked by strength. Her quiet departure is not a denial of feeling, but a declaration that her emotional sovereignty will not be bargained with or diminished. She embodies the archetype of the wise woman, the one who has passed through the fires of dependency and emerged with the radiant glow of self-possession. Her choice to leave without noise is a radical act of love, for herself first and for the man as well, offering him a mirror in which to see what he must heal. This silent parting is a form of shadow work for both. For her, it is the integration of the wounded feminine, choosing to honor her needs without shame. For him, it is the confrontation with his fragmented self, the ego's desperate clinging to stories that no longer serve. In the empty space she leaves behind, there is room for transformation, but only if he dares to enter it with courage rather than fear. You, standing on the threshold of this story, are invited to reflect. Where do you seek your worth? In the noise of validation or the quiet power of self-acceptance? The woman who lets go quietly does not diminish her value to spare fragile egos. She illuminates the path to freedom, showing that true power lies in the mastery of one's own inner world, not in the external echoes of approval. This tale reveals the eternal tension between presence and absence, attachment and autonomy, noise and silence. It is a story written not only in the pages of relationships, but inscribed deep within the psyche's architecture. The man's relentless thoughts of her are not mere longing, but a call to awaken, a summons to dive beneath the surface of his own unconscious to find the wholeness he seeks. In this awakening lies the possibility of rebirth. The quiet departure, painful as it may be, is a crucible of transformation. It compels him to shed illusions and embrace a deeper truth, that love is not possession, but the freedom to be fully oneself, even if that means letting go. It teaches that sometimes the most profound connection is forged not in clinging, but in release. And for you, who may have felt the sting of a quiet goodbye, know this: silence can be the loudest language of love. It can be a sacred boundary, a shield, and a doorway all at once. To leave quietly is to honor the soul's journey beyond ego's reach, to choose peace over pain, sovereignty over surrender. The woman who walks away without a fight holds a power that cannot be grasped, but must be felt, deep in the marrow of your being, where the shadow and light meet. Her silence is not absence, but presence in its purest form, a call to awaken from the sleep of dependency and to rise into the full radiant light of selfhood. In the wake of her quiet departure, he confronts the raw and unyielding silence that speaks louder than any words ever could. This silence is not emptiness, it is a crucible forged in the depths of the unconscious, where the ego is stripped bare and the soul is exposed to its own fractured reflection. The man who once believed he understood her, who thought he held the key to her heart, now finds himself locked out of the sanctuary she has built within herself. His mind races, attempting to fill the void with memories, fantasies and regret, but the space she left remains resolute and unyielding. It is here, in this sacred void, that his true test begins. The psyche, as Jung taught, is a living, breathing entity, and within it lies the shadow, the collection of all that is denied, rejected, or feared. The woman's silent exit awakens his shadow, calling forth parts of himself he has long avoided. Her absence becomes a mirror reflecting not just what he lost in her, but what he has yet to face within himself. The fear of abandonment, the hunger for validation, the desperate need to control what will never be controlled. The more he tries to recapture her, the more he sinks into the quicksand of his own unresolved pain. She embodies the archetype of the sovereign feminine, a presence both fierce and tender whose power lies in the mastery of self rather than the conquest of others. Her quiet leaving is an act of immense strength, a boundary drawn with the precision of a warrior and the wisdom of a sage. She refuses to be diminished by the echoes of his longing or the noise of his pursuit. Instead, she chooses a path of dignity and peace, knowing that true power is born not from clinging but from letting go. This dynamic illuminates the ancient dance between the masculine and feminine principles within us all. The masculine ego, with its hunger for certainty and control, clashes against the fluid, mysterious currents of the feminine unconscious. When she departs silently, she disrupts the narrative he has constructed, a narrative where he is the hero, the savior, the center of the story. Her silence shatters this illusion, forcing him to face the profound truth that some stories do not end with triumph or closure, but with acceptance and surrender. Here, the wisdom of Stoic philosophy resonates deeply. Epictetus taught that it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. The man who obsesses over her quiet absence is caught in the trap of reaction, spinning in circles of why and what if. Yet the Stoic path beckons him toward a higher truth, the cultivation of inner resilience and peace regardless of external circumstance. It is a journey from victimhood to mastery, from fragmentation to wholeness. But this transformation is not easy. The man must descend into his own underworld, confronting the shadows he has long avoided. The silence she leaves behind is a guidepost, a symbol of the void that must be embraced before rebirth can occur. It is an invitation to shadow work, where the disowned parts of the self are brought into light and integrated. Only then can he rise from the ashes of loss and claim his own sovereignty. For the woman, this departure is a declaration of self-love and empowerment. She has traversed the labyrinth of her own fears and emerged with a new understanding of worth, one that is independent of another's presence or absence. In her silence, she embodies the wise woman archetype, the one who knows that true freedom comes not from possession, but from the courage to choose herself again and again. Her quiet exit is not a retry, but a powerful advance into the realm of autonomy and grace. What lessons lie here for those who watch and listen? Perhaps it is this, that worth cannot be measured by the echo of another's longing or the noise of their pursuit. True worth is forged in the silent crucible of self-acceptance and boundary setting. To walk away quietly is to wield a power that transcends drama and demand, a power rooted in the unshakable foundation of inner peace. The man who can't stop thinking about the woman who let him go too quietly is not haunted by her absence alone, but by the challenge she presents, the challenge to face himself fully, to embrace his own shadow, and to rise beyond the illusions of control and possession. Her silence becomes a teacher, guiding him toward a deeper understanding of love as freedom, loss as transformation, and solitude as sacred. And you, who have felt the sting of a quiet goodbye, know this. In silence, there is a language more profound than words. It is the language of the soul's awakening, the call to reclaim your own sovereignty, and the invitation to find strength not in the noise of validation, but in the calm certainty of self-worth. The woman who lets go without a fight carries within her the light of countless ancestors who understood that to survive, to thrive, to become whole, one must sometimes walk away, not in anger or defeat, but in quiet triumph. She chooses herself when the world demands she diminish. She honors her spirit when the ego begs for more, and in her quiet departure, she plants a seed of awakening for all who dare to witness. This story of silence, loss, shadow, and sovereignty is not just theirs. It is the story of the human heart, the eternal dance between presence and absence, attachment and freedom, ego and soul. It is a call to all who listen to awaken from the sleep of dependency and rise into the radiant light of their own being. There is a profound alchemy in the silent goodbye, a transformation that ripples far beyond the surface of the parted lives. In the absence of fanfare, in the quiet withdrawal, lies a sacred crucible where identity is stripped down to its barest bones, where the masks fall away and the raw truth of the self is exposed. The woman who leaves without protest or plea has, in that stillness, declared a boundary so absolute it cannot be breached by argument, tears, or regret. Her departure is a testament to the power of inner sovereignty, the unyielding refusal to sacrifice her essence for the sake of keeping another's fragile ego intact. For the man left behind, this silence is an invitation and a challenge, an invitation to enter the deep shadow of his own psyche, and a challenge to confront the fragmented self that has clung to illusion and control for too long. His relentless thinking about her is less about her and more about the parts of himself he has refused to see. The abandoned child, the fearful lover, the ego desperate to weave a narrative that restores order to chaos. The woman's quiet exit becomes a mirror reflecting these wounds, and in that reflection he is forced to reckon with the limits of possession and the vast terrain of freedom. The interplay between masculine and feminine energies is never static. It is a perpetual movement, a dance of tension and release, of shadow and light. The masculine ego, anchored in the desire to conquer and comprehend, struggles to hold on to what slips through its grasp. The feminine unconscious, vast and mysterious, moves like water, resilient, shaping itself to the contours of life's unseen depths. When she chooses silence over confrontation, she is wielding the power of the feminine divine, fluid, unfathomable, and ultimately untouchable by the rigid structures of the ego. This dynamic exposes a fundamental truth about human relationships and the journey toward individuation. Love in its highest form is not about possession or control. It is about the courageous acceptance of impermanence and the willingness to release what no longer serves the growth of the soul. The woman who walks away quietly embodies this truth in its purest form. She does not retreat out of fear or weakness. She advances into the sacred territory of self-love and self-respect. Her departure is a declaration that her worth is not contingent on another's presence, but rooted in the inviolable sanctuary of her own being. Within this silent departure, there is also a profound teaching about trauma and healing. The wounds that surface in the man's obsessive thoughts are echoes of early abandonment, unhealed betrayals, and the deep-seated fears that live beneath the conscious mind. His mind churns with if-onlys and why-didn'ts, but these mental loops are mere symptoms of a deeper psychic fragmentation. True healing arises not from grasping at the lost, but from descending into the underworld of the self, embracing the shadow with compassion and emerging with a renewed sense of wholeness. Here, the wisdom of Seneca and the Stoics offers a timeless balm. They remind us that it is not the external events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. The man's suffering is intensified by his interpretation of her silence as rejection, abandonment, or failure. Yet if he could embrace the Stoic ideal of equanimity, recognizing that change and loss are the natural rhythms of existence, he might find peace even in the echoing void she leaves behind. This peace is not passive resignation, but an active mastery over one's internal world, a fortress no external absence can breach. For the woman, this journey is a reclaiming of power long denied by societal and patriarchal narratives that equate female worth with availability and sacrifice. Her quiet exit is a radical act of rebellion against those narratives, an assertion that her spirit will not be bargained for or silenced. In choosing herself, she dismantles the chains of dependency and steps into the radiant sovereignty of the archetypal queen, a figure who rules not by domination but by the deep, steady power of self-possession. You, watching now, are invited into this story not merely as an observer, but as a participant in the great dance of shadow and light. What shadows do you carry when someone leaves quietly? What parts of yourself have you denied or feared? The woman's silence is a challenge to look beyond the noise, beyond the external narrative, and to confront the inner truths that long for healing. To embrace the stillness is to embrace the path of individuation, the heroic journey toward wholeness where ego dissolves and soul awakens. This tale is also a meditation on freedom. the freedom to be seen fully and to choose oneself without apology. The woman who leaves quietly shows us that the most potent form of love is love for oneself. She demonstrates that dignity is not found in pleading or pleading for another's recognition, but in the courage to walk away when staying means losing oneself. Her silence is a language of liberation, a declaration that some connections are sacred precisely because they are chosen freely, not clung to out of fear. The man who cannot stop thinking about her is caught in a liminal space, between the familiar past and the unknown future, between attachment and detachment. This space, though painful, is fertile ground for growth. It is the space where transformation occurs, where the soul sheds old skins and prepares to rise anew. His obsession is the mind's way of avoiding this uncomfortable but necessary descent. Yet, if he chooses to lean into the discomfort, to face the silence not as absence but as presence, he may discover a wellspring of inner strength previously hidden. And so the story unfolds, not as a tale of loss alone, but as a profound exploration of the human condition, the eternal tension between holding on and letting go, between ego and soul, between shadow and light. It is a story written in the language of the unconscious, whispered in the silence of parting, and inscribed on the hearts of those who dare to love and lose. The woman who lets go quietly holds a power that cannot be taken or diminished. She is a living testament to the truth that freedom is the highest form of love, and that the deepest bonds are forged not through possession but through the honoring of boundaries. In her silent departure, she offers a sacred gift, not just to the man who cannot stop thinking of her, but to all who witness her courage and grace. The mind of the man left behind is a tempest of restless thoughts, a storm that rages because it refuses to accept the stillness she chose. He lingers in the space between memory and longing, haunted by the ghost of what was and the haunting silence of what will never be again. His fixation is not merely on the woman who slipped away, but on the vast emptiness her quiet departure carved into his psyche, a void that screams with the unanswered questions of a broken story. In his mind, she becomes a symbol of the freedom he both envies and fears, a mysterious force beyond his control or comprehension. This tension is the shadow of the masculine psyche, bruised and fragmented by the loss of its perceived dominion. Carl Jung taught that the ego craves narratives where it remains the hero, the master of fate. When a woman leaves too quietly, she refuses to play the part the ego demands. She breaks the script, dissolving the boundaries of control and predictability. This shatters the illusion that love is a conquest to be won or a possession to be held. Instead, it reveals the raw truth. Love is a dance of souls, an unpredictable flow where surrender is sometimes the only way forward. The man's obsessive thoughts are a symptom of a deeper wound, the longing to reclaim not just the woman, but the parts of himself that felt lost when she left. In Jungian terms, he is grappling with the anima, the unconscious feminine within, which calls him to emotional depth, vulnerability, and transformation. Yet the ego resists this call, retreating into loops of control and projection, mistaking the anima's gentle voice for chaos or threat. The woman's quiet exit is a catalyst, forcing him into a shadow confrontation that, while painful, holds the potential for profound growth. This confrontation with the shadow is no easy journey. It requires the courage to face the disowned parts of the self, the fears of abandonment, the wounds of rejection, the addictive patterns of attachment. The man's mind races with endless what-ifs, but these are the ego's desperate attempts to maintain coherence in the face of dissolution. True healing demands something more radical, the willingness to sit in the uncomfortable silence, to dissolve the need for closure, and to accept loss as a form of transformation rather than defeat. The woman who departs quietly is a figure of immense power and sacred autonomy. She embodies the archetype of the wise woman, an embodiment of the collective feminine who understands that self-love and boundaries are the foundation of true connection. Her silence is not absence, it is presence in its most profound form. It speaks of an inner peace forged through shadow work and individuation, where the ego no longer dictates worth or belonging. She chooses herself not out of cruelty, but out of the deep knowing that her soul cannot thrive within the confines of possession or desperation. Stoic philosophy echoes through this dynamic, offering a pathway through the storm of obsession and loss. Seneca wrote that, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." The man's mind, trapped in a loop of longing, is ensnared by imagined scenarios and distorted narratives. The Stoics teach the power of perspective, the ability to see beyond the turmoil and recognize the impermanence of all things. In embracing this perspective, the man can cultivate an inner citadel, a place of calm where no external absence can invade. This is not a denial of pain, but a mastery of it, transforming suffering into resilience. For the woman, her quiet departure is a reclaiming of power denied by societal conditioning that teaches women to shrink, to silence, to sacrifice. In walking away without fanfare, she breaks the chains of these narratives, choosing instead the radical freedom of self-respect. Her silence is a language of sovereignty, a refusal to be diminished by anyone else's expectations or needs. She steps into the archetypal queen's domain, where strength is measured not by domination, but by grace, dignity, and the unwavering commitment to oneself. This story is an invitation for all who have experienced the sting of a quiet goodbye to embark on their own journey of self-discovery, to witness the silent departure as not a loss alone, but a doorway into the sacred work of individuation, the heroic quest to integrate shadow and light, to embrace vulnerability as strength, and to find peace within oneself. The woman's silence is a call to awaken from the illusion of dependency and to rise into the fullness of one's own being. You may find yourself reflecting, what does it mean to love without possession, to choose freedom over fear, to hold someone dear not with chains but with open hands? The woman who lets go quietly teaches that the most profound love is rooted in freedom, the freedom to be whole, to be sovereign, to be unapologetically oneself. The man who cannot stop thinking of her is caught in the liminal space between clinging and release, between pain and growth. This space, though agonizing, is fertile ground for transformation. It demands surrender, not surrender to loss, but surrender to the deeper mystery of life's impermanence and the soul's capacity to heal. Through this surrender, he may discover a new kind of love, one that begins within himself, a love that no external absence can extinguish. The woman who walks away quietly holds a power that transcends the ephemeral dramas of attachment. Her silence is a beacon for those ready to reclaim their own sovereignty, to step into their own light beyond the shadows of dependency and egoic desire. In her quiet strength, she offers a profound lesson, that sometimes the greatest love we can give is the love we first give ourselves. The silence she leaves behind is not an empty void. It is a sacred space charged with meaning, a threshold where transformation is birthed from stillness. For the man who cannot stop thinking about her, this silence is unbearable because it reveals the futility of trying to grasp what was never truly his to hold. It exposes the illusion of control that his ego so desperately clings to, the belief that love can be demanded, that presence can be forced, that connection is a transaction rather than a sacred exchange. Her quiet departure dismantles these illusions with the quiet authority of a tidal wave, reshaping his inner landscape in ways he cannot yet fully comprehend. In this crucible of loss, the ego's desperate chatter is met by the profound wisdom of the unconscious. The woman's silence becomes a language beyond words, a message from the depths of the feminine psyche, speaking through absence rather than presence. It is an unspoken reminder that to love deeply is to embrace impermanence, to honor boundaries, and to recognize that sometimes the greatest act of love is to let go. This is the paradox of love that Jung illuminated, the tension between attachment and freedom, between the desire for union and the necessity of individuation. The man's relentless thinking is a reflection of his resistance to this paradox. His mind replays memories, invents scenarios, and clings to hope because surrender feels like annihilation. Yet it is precisely in surrender that the possibility of rebirth arises. When the ego relinquishes its grip on control, it creates room for the soul to breathe, to heal, and to expand. This process is the essence of individuation, the alchemical journey toward wholeness, where the fragmented self is integrated into a harmonious whole. Her quiet exit embodies the strength of the feminine archetype that Jung described as the Great Mother. Not a figure of mere nurture, but a powerful force of creation and destruction, of life and death, of renewal. She is the woman who knows that boundaries are sacred and that self-love is the foundation of all love. Her departure is not a retreat into weakness, but a bold assertion of sovereignty, a refusal to be diminished by the demands of another's ego. In this act, she models a form of empowerment that transcends the superficial measures of worth imposed by society. Stoicism offers a philosophical lens through which the man might begin to find peace. Marcus Aurelius counseled that external events are beyond our control, only our judgments and actions lie within our power. The man's torment is intensified by his interpretation of her silence as abandonment and rejection. Yet, if he can shift his perspective, if he can learn to see her departure not as a personal failing but as a necessary boundary, he may begin to cultivate an inner fortress of tranquility. This fortress is built not on denial but on acceptance, not on resistance but on the embrace of reality as it is. For the woman, the act of letting go quietly is a declaration of self-worth that defies the cultural scripts demanding women sacrifice themselves for love. She steps away from the patterns of codependence and emotional entanglement, choosing instead the path of autonomy and grace. Her silence is a radical statement that her value is inherent, not contingent on the presence or approval of another. She embodies the archetype of the queen, the sovereign ruler of her inner kingdom, whose power emanates from self-knowledge and integrity. This story, charged with Jungian symbolism and psychological depth, invites every listener to reflect on their own relationship to attachment and loss. What shadows lurk beneath the surface of your longing? What parts of yourself have you projected onto others, hoping they might fill the void within? The woman's quiet departure challenges you to confront these questions, to engage in the sacred work of shadow integration, and to reclaim the power that comes from choosing yourself first. In this narrative, the dance between presence and absence, attachment and freedom, becomes a profound metaphor for the human soul's journey. The man's obsessive thoughts are a symptom of the ego's struggle to hold on to what is inevitably transient, while the woman's silent exit is an embodiment of the soul's call toward wholeness and freedom. This dynamic reveals the fundamental tension at the heart of all relationships, the tension between the desire for union and the imperative of individuation. You who watch and listen are invited to witness this story not as a tragedy, but as a transformative myth. The woman who lets go quietly teaches a powerful lesson, that sometimes the greatest love you can give is the love you give yourself. Her silence is a language of liberation, a testament to the strength found in boundaries and the courage required to walk away with grace. And to the man who cannot stop thinking of her, know this: your journey through obsession and longing is also a passage toward deeper self-awareness. In surrendering the illusion of control, you may discover a profound freedom, a love that begins not with another but within yourself. The silence she left is not a void to be feared, but a sacred space inviting you to awaken. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.